Hey everyone, this is Randy. Welcome to this edition of E3 Minutes for Life. I'm standing here again near the Great Salt Lake. It's about probably 400 or 500 yards away from me over here. But what I wanted to focus on this time is what you see behind me. And I don't know if you can see in the haze or not, there is a huge smokestack in the middle of the screen. And behind that is a pretty good sized mountain. Again, I'm near Salt Lake City, Utah, so you can imagine the mountains around here are very majestic and beautiful. But what I want to focus on today is the smokestack in comparison to the mountains. When we were driving toward where we're stopped right now, as soon as we came around the mountain and I could see that smokestack, I commented to Kathy and the others that were in the car with us on how big it was. But I didn't really realize exactly how big it was until we got to an information center a little ways down the road, and it said that that smokestack is almost the same height as the Empire State Building. And I just couldn't believe it. I mean, I almost argued with it in my mind. There's no way. I've seen the Empire State Building. It seems so huge. But what we finally realized was it's not because of the size of the smokestack that I thought the smokestack was small. It's the size of the smokestack compared to the mountain behind it. That mountain makes it seem like it's not as big. And the life correlation I want to draw for this, and this is E3 Minutes for Life, is I think there's times when we may have problems, but then we see someone else's problems and it makes ours seem like they're insignificant, when in reality, they are an important thing. Or, let me go a different direction. We have problems that seem so big that it makes someone else's problems seem small in comparison. And I think the reason is because we're not dealing with their problems, we're dealing with our own problems. And I think, when I see people going through life, one thing I have discovered, everybody's battling something. Either they've got financial problems, they've got marriage problems, they've got a kid going off the deep end problems, maybe they're battling a health issue or their parents are. Everybody's battling something. And if we get caught up in the fact that my problems are bigger than theirs, so theirs are insignificant, or their problems are so much bigger than mine that it makes me feel bad for even, asking for help on my problem or whatever it may be, then I think at that point we lose that perspective and we're just totally out in left field in the way that we're looking at that. So I hope that as you look at this smokestack, you look at that mountain, you'll realize we've got problems, and those problems are real, and I'm not trying to downplay that. Other people have bigger problems, and that's very real as well. And I don't wish that on other people, and I don't want that for you. But the way that you work through it, the attitude that you hold, the perspective that you maintain is going to allow you to work through that in a more positive way and really, truly help you to get to the end of that without it derailing you. I think one of the biggest differences between our problems and mountains, the closer we get to mountains, the bigger we realize they are. But quite often, the closer we get to our problems, once we attack it, once we're in it and can't back out of it, we realize they're not quite as bad as we might have thought they were. Don't know if this has been motivational to you, but I hope it has been helpful to you. Thanks for joining us for this edition of E3 Minutes for Life, and we'll see you next time. Hey everyone, this is Randy. Welcome to this extra mile for the E3 Minutes for Life. You probably just watched a video where I talked about the smokestack and the mountains behind us. And let me just say, the E3 Minutes Extra Mile, this is a biblically based, a Christian based add-on to what I just talked about. So if that's not your bag and you want to turn it off, feel free to knock yourself out and do that. But if you're a person of faith, or if you're a person who that could be helpful to you, I hope you'll stick with me for a minute. Here's what I talked a minute ago and the other one about the fact that sometimes our problems seem different than somebody else's problems. Well, what I want to talk about in this extra mile edition of E3 Minutes is, if we think about the smokestack as our problems, no matter how big our problems are, and again, I said in the other episode in the E3 Minutes of this, that's almost as big as the Empire State Building. No matter how big our problems are, God's even bigger. When I start looking at my problems and I start trying to solve those on my own, or I start trying to attack those on my own, or endure those on my own, or find a way around those on my own, one thing I realize is a lot of times I can't, but number two, God may not want me to go around those problems. He may want me to go right through those problems. He may be preparing me for something bigger later. Some of you have heard me tell the story before that our oldest child almost died in 2010, but I look back on that and think of some of the things we went through before that took us to the hospital and the emergency room and some financial issues that we had. I think all those things were getting us ready to go through that time when Clayton was so sick. And I always have to keep in mind, God's like the mountain. He's way bigger than my problems. And if all I see is the problems, I can get engulfed in despair. I can get engulfed in worry. I can give up. But if I realize that God is that much bigger and that He's going to carry me through that, it certainly gives me courage, and it certainly gives me hope that I can find him on the other side. I hope that this has been encouraging to you on the E3 Minutes Extra Mile, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a bunch for joining me today.